Hey everybody, Pete A. Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show. I've got a hell of a show for you today. You are going to be able to say, I knew this guy before he really made it big. And not that Jack Carr is not already huge, because he's a multi-time bestseller with his Terminal List series of books. His latest book is called Savage Son. It just came out. Also, it's read by Ray Porter, who's basically the number one Audible reader. So if you're an Audible person, 1, sign up through the Break It Down show. 2, always get your books through the Break It Down show. But 3, you are going to love Savage Son. I've read the book. I'm going to go back to the beginning and start the series over again. And I'm telling you right now, Jack is an awesome author. Wait, before that, though, he was also an awesome combat warrior. He was a Navy SEAL. He was a commander in the SEAL teams. And let me tell you something, he's reached the pinnacle in both professions. So you're going to love who Jack is. You're going to love how he tells his story, what he describes, and you're going to love what happens next. By the way, this episode is hosted with Scott Huesing, who's also a best-selling author, and myself, so you'll get a chance to hear some familiar voices. It's always wonderful to share the air with Scott. And now let me tell you what happens for Jack. So Chris Pratt, Chris Pratt, gets a hold of Jack's work and says, I want to star in this and I want to produce it. So Jack's work is about to explode even bigger. So super big recommendations, and straight up 5 stars on Savage Son. If you like any kind of thriller reading, this guy's life has been a thriller. And then he's also thought about these stories since he was a kid and developed them into a full-on universe that he can now produce into a TV series. So, highest recommendations we have. Jack is a great dude. You can see lots of interviews on him, but I think we got something special from him because of the way we set everything up. I know you're going to enjoy this episode of the Break It Down show. Hey, here's how you can support us. You buy the shirts, which I didn't get done this weekend, but I will get done this week. You can always buy the books through the links that we offer. That goes straight to our affiliate account on Amazon. That gives us just a couple of bucks every now and then. The other thing is you can always share. You can tell someone about it. If you can do an endorsement to someone face-to-face, you're looking for a podcast, you got to listen to the Break It Down show. They do 5 shows a week. Hey, by the way, if you're new here, thank you so much. If you live abroad, hey, thank you for listening. If you're, live in another country and you just love what we do, hey, thank you. I really dig that we have such a big international presence, and I always want to make sure that you all know that I appreciate you. I see your countries lighting up. The UK has been rocking lately. Thank you very, very much. And we're going to be doing more stuff out there. And if you got people from your country that you'd want to have on the show, let me know. Pete at breakitdownshow.com. I'm absolutely eager to hear from you all. One more quick thing to say. Save the brave, save the brave.org. Do it. You know what to do. All right. Here comes Jack Carr.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland. This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is author Jack Carr, and you are listening to the Break It Down show.
Jack Carr, back in the olden times, was a combat warrior, a Navy SEAL who has turned into an author. And so one of the things we do here, Jack, is we recognize that we all have Letterman jackets. Scott may talk about things from combat. I may bring them up, but that's what we used to do. What you do now and have been doing and are still doing is write incredible books. When you were on the teams, was this something that you were already working on, or was this a black and white transition from I was on the teams, now I'm an author?
I guess it's a little bit of a morph because the 2 things I wanted to do in life were 1, serve my country as a SEAL, and 2, write fiction in this genre. So I didn't work on it per se, but I continued reading. So I was always a reader from a very young age. My mom was a librarian, so I grew up surrounded by books. And as soon as I could read the things my parents were reading, which was about 5th grade, I started reading Tom Clancy, Nelson DeMille, David Morrell, J.C. Pollock, A.J. Quinnell, Mark Olden, all these guys who had protagonists with backgrounds that I wanted to have in real life one day. So for me, it was just very natural to, 1, want to do that first, and then want to write these same type of books that I was enjoying so much growing up. So during my time in the teams, I continued to read, although I read a lot more nonfiction at the time on warfare, terrorism, insurgencies, counterinsurgencies, that sort of thing. But I always continued to read my favorite authors in the genre. So Vince Flynn's and Brad Thor's and Daniel Silva's and Stephen Hunter's and all those novels at the same time. So I was really continuing my education. And then, as you guys know, when you drop your papers in the military, you go in a different pile. And so for that last year that I was in, my job was to essentially get out of this gigantic bureaucracy and go to all those appointments and sign all those papers and get all those readouts and all that sort of thing. So I had time to start writing. So really it was that last year that was the morph portion where I started writing and started leaving the other life behind.
In the transition class, Jack's the guy in the back of the room just scrawling on his computer, not listening to the
it was so
retired,
ridiculous.
the retired CPO is like,
everything
here's how you,
I did.
Here's how you build a resume, Jack.
Yeah, my goal was to never have a resume or never have a business card.
Good for you.
Move forward. So those classes, everything that I did during that year that had anything to do with the military was pretty much a gigantic waste of time.
Yeah, that waste of time was felt by all of us. Like, here's how you get a job so you can drive a forklift. Like, are you fucking kidding me? You guys sold me on my fancy I'm working at Huachuca, which is like the home for intel for all of the military. And you got a guy pitching forklift jobs and cop jobs? Like, come on.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to get out of there. It was time. As soon as I dropped those papers, it was time. I made that transition in my mind. And really before that, I started thinking about it because I wasn't taking guys downrange for my last couple of years in the military. I was for my first 16 and a half years. But then after that, it was really, hey, I'm at shore duty here. And I'm at BUDS as the operations officer. There's 800 students, 200 staff. But really, if I don't do anything, that train continues to move. Guys are still going to do push-ups and sit-ups and pull-ups and do their runs and swims. For me, that was really where I made the decision in my mind as I was coming back from that last Iraq deployment, knowing I was going to go to be an operations officer, knowing that it was time to take care of my family, that I made that transition in my mind as far as starting to think about the future and realizing that, hey, it's time to pursue this other dream that I had from when I was a little kid. And then when I dropped those papers, then it was really time to get to work.
And what year was that, Jack?
I came back to Iraq at the end of 2011. And so I'd say like spring of 2012 is where I really made that decision that I was going to get out at the 20-year mark, just had a few more years to go. And
Sure.
But it made sense to stay in, to give back a little bit, one, and then two, figure out that transition process, take a breath, and figure out what I was going to do next. Even though I knew what it was important to also have some backup plans, have some contingency plans in case best-selling author didn't work out. It's good to have a couple backups.
You're kind of an anomaly too, because you do 20 years in the Navy, Special Forces. You're a Mustang, just like me. You're enlisted, then you became an officer, and immediately when you transitioned, you went right into writing. And I think a lot of guys, they wallow in the notion of, I'm going to contract, or I'm going to get this GS position because that feels comfortable to them. Tell me about your experience. You just totally did a 180 and dove right into becoming a writer and an entertainer and sharing these awesome stories.
So I made that a conscious decision to do that. While I was at that position at BUDS at the SEAL training facility, I saw a lot of people that transitioned out and really couldn't let go of the past life, and they either kept wanting to give friends tours of BUDS, or they wanted to go to all these different charity events. They lived in the same town and would see the former teammates at school drop off or at the same bars, which also happened to have pictures of people that didn't make it home on the walls. See friends at the grocery store, see wives of friends were deployed. You were just immersed in that culture and that community, and then when they got out, they just kept that more than a foot in that past life. And so I recognized that and thought, okay, when I make this break, I'm going to make a clean break, both physically and psychologically. So we left Coronado, California, and moved to the mountains, and we wanted to raise our kids up here in a ski town. And at the same time, use that background it makes me hopefully who I am today. It's a huge part of who I am today. Hopefully it makes me a better writer, better father, better husband, better citizen. But at the same time, I don't live back there. I move forward, and I'm going to continue to write these novels going forward. Third one comes out. I'm working on the fourth now.
Do you feel, for lack of a better word, Jack, do you feel some sense of, I don't know, pity or sadness for guys that can't let go of the past in that sense, that they're constantly revisiting the battle days or the camaraderie that you share in the military, and then they just can't let it go. I mean, do you feel bad for those people? And it's a hard way to put it, because I'm not disparaging that, because it's important to stay connected. How do you transcend that?
Yeah, no, I don't feel bad at all. Everybody has a different path. My path just doesn't include living back there. It includes using that background to move forward, because it is such a big part of me. So I did it for so long, did it for 20 years, had some very visceral, powerful experiences downrange. I feel very fortunate also that I have all my fingers and toes and emerged relatively unscathed from those experiences. But so I don't feel bad. It's just everybody has a different path, and mine happens to be making that clean break and moving forward and moving onward and identifying that next purpose, which is taking care of my family, and then following that next passion and that next goal that I had from a very early age, which is writing these types of novels. So yeah, no, I don't think about that too much. It's just everyone has a different way to live and deal with life and to live it. So
yeah, I agree with you. I agree 100%.
But let's be honest, though, at your compound up there in the mountains, you still got a helipad in case commando happens in real life. Like, you were still ready to be pulled back in.
That movie was very influential at a very early age. So I won't deny that we are prepared in a similar fashion if anybody comes calling.
And by the way, because, we're age peers with this stuff, absolutely when I was about to, and I didn't know this going in, when I was about to go to the Army, I was working at Costco, and another guy who was in the same situation as me, didn't have enough experience, had a college degree. We couldn't break through into anything. He was like, "Do you read Tom Clancy books?" As we're stocking Tom Clancy books on the shelves in Costco. And, sure enough, yes, I did. Next thing you know, like literally not even 6 weeks later, I'm in the Army going to go be a spy, So those books have an impact on the decisions guys like us make, Talk a little bit about.
They certainly influenced me. And funny enough, when I went into the military back then, you had to choose what's called a source rating for BUD. So you it's an MOS, but you did it before showing up at BUDS, because the Navy thought that, hey, 80% of these people are going to wash out of this program, and so let's train them up in whatever they're going to be, whatever their specialty is going to be beforehand, and then as soon as they wash out, off they go to their job, whatever that is, whether it's a machinist mate, postman's mate, gunner's mate, whatever that might be. And I chose intelligence. So I went to an intelligence school in Damjan, Virginia. And I'll tell you what, everything, I sailed through that course, not because of what we learned in the classroom there, but because of all the Tom Clancy novels I had read growing up. And that is 100% true. So I did not have to do very much studying in that 16-week school. I already had that knowledge growing up. And interestingly enough, some of the things that get redacted from my novels today are things that I learned and read about well before I went into the military. Some things in junior high school. So it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, Tom Clancy had to fight that in court all the time too. He's like, you realize that's in Jane's, like that's already open knowledge. So I'm looking at your books right now: Terminal List, Savage Son, and True Believer. Talk to us. Give us an idea. Is it a series? Do you write individual books? How does your universe work?
Yeah. So the first one, I wrote down about 5, 6, 7, 8 different ideas as I started. So still in the military, did about a 1-page executive summary on these different ideas. And I chose the one that I thought would be the most primal, the most visceral, the most hard hitting, and the most likely to be picked up by New York Publishing House. So that one was the Terminal List. And it was kind of up in the air between that one and Savage Son, which is the third one. But I knew that I had to develop the characters to get them to a point where I could explore the theme of Savage Son. So for the first one, Revenge Without Constraint. And I had a little yellow sticky on my computer that had the word revenge on it. And I got that from Stephen Pressfield, who did the same thing. I think he did it on a typewriter, but I had it on my little Apple computer here.
Steve, you're old.
Yeah, he's so
Steve,
awesome.
You're an old Marine.
That's right, the Marine. And of course, wrote Legend of Bagger Vance and the Afghan Campaign and Gates of Fire. And then a series of books on creativity, The War of Art, Returning Pro, The Authentic Swing, just an amazing guy. But I took his advice and put that yellow sticky there so that if either a sentence, a paragraph, chapter, or something didn't directly or indirectly lead back to that theme of revenge, then I edited it out. It was gone. right away. And that really kept me on track. And I think that's why once it got to New York, there were hardly any edits. There was a couple, like one was, would he really say this here? Would he think this here? And then a third one I don't remember. But I expected a ton of edits, content edits, but there were hardly any. And I think that's because I stayed on theme because of Stephen Pressfield. So that was when I explored first. And really, because I loved books with the theme of revenge. I loved movies with the theme of revenge. It seems like people in general like that theme because things you can't do in real life, you can escape and get them done in the pages of a book or in an hour and a half, 2 hour movie. I think that goes back to really stories around the campfire, which is why I wanted to stay very primal, very visceral for that first novel. But more than that, it's also a story of someone who comes back from Iraq and Afghanistan and takes the techniques that worked so well against us from the enemy and brings those to home soil as he unravels a conspiracy and brings those tactics and techniques to the people that wronged him, his team, his family. And then at a deeper level, if people want to think about it a little deeper, it's about someone who served in Iraq and Afghanistan that brings those wars home to the front doors of people who have been sending young men and women to their deaths for close to 20 years now.
So are you Jim Reese? Is that you say
no,
it's based off
he's a much better shot than I am. But he's a former SEAL enlisted sniper who then becomes an officer. So he has a background similar to mine. And I think why the book was so powerful is that, and why it resonated with New York, who sees thousands of these books every year, is because the emotions, the feelings that the protagonist feels in the novels are things that I felt at some point downrange. So I just took those feelings, took those emotions, and applied them to a completely fictional narrative.
Sure.
I think that.
I mean, you got to write what you know, and that makes the writing easier, more fluid. And you mentioned revenge, that emotion of exacting revenge on the bad guy. I mean, did you have that in Iraq? Did you exact revenge on those who were attacking you and your shipmates?
I don't think I put that much thought into it there. It was more professional than that, I think. And sure, you get ambushed or whatever, something happens, you lose somebody, the Marines you're working with lose somebody, whatever it is. It wasn't, it was a war. So for me, I don't have to think about that. Enemy is adapting to us. We're adapting to them. We need to do it faster. Problem set for me. How do you solve that problem set? How do you adapt faster than the enemy? How do you disrupt, dismantle, destroy these different networks? So for me, rather than, it wasn't personal as far as revenge goes. Maybe at the beginning, I had some of those thoughts right after 9/11. I have to go back and really search through the memory banks because it's been a while. But really, it was just time to do the job. Before September 11th, our job was to prepare for war. September 11th came, and now it was time to go to war. It was really as simple as that.
How do you balance that in your head as an artist now, having to understand the industry of writing what sells and infusing your own ethics into that? Because that's interesting. Because as professional warfighters, we are held to a higher standard, and you have to take those experiences. And I talk about that often, about the law of war and our code of conduct and everything we're held to a higher standard that makes us better, that makes Americans number one, and our military is so great. How'd you balance that? The ethics?
Well, I talked to my guys about it a lot. And I thought about that a lot, and I incorporated it into all of our training blocks. So really we train up for about 18 months and then we deploy for around 6 back and we do it all again. So I didn't want the morals, the ethics, that part of it to be one brief that maybe they got from a JAG who came in for a half hour as they're thinking about other things. Maybe everyone's not there, and then they're downrange. And the first time they think about this is when they have someone in flex cuffs who just killed somebody in the platoon. So I knew how important it was to talk about that ahead of time and make that a part of our training, especially as a leader. I thought that was my responsibility. So, I often talk about how it is important that we maintain the moral high ground, because sometimes that's about all that differentiates us from the enemy. For us, like once you have someone in flex cuffs, no matter what they just did, now as Americans, it's our responsibility to take care of that person, no matter how hard that is. That's just how it goes. Your time to put them in the ground is when you enter that room and they have that AK. That's the time to put them in the ground. If you don't do it then, for some reason, and now they're in custody, well, now they need to be taken back, exploit them for intelligence, interrogate them, and hopefully go out maybe that same night and keep dismantling that network. So, but talking about it and not just assuming that guys are going to understand because they went to SEER school or because they got one brief from a JAG who's never been in that situation and is just regurgitating some copy from a text or from a slide that he's supposed to give that day, PowerPoint presentation. It's important as leaders to discuss that ahead of time and make that a part of our training, not just the tactics, techniques, and procedures that allows us to go in and crush the enemy.
Is that true of your characters? Or because they're from fantasy land, you can make them a little more vindictive. You can make them a little more dangerous, or, you can play with their struggle more openly. I mean, obviously you guys aren't sitting there, the team's going, I really struggle ethically with what we're doing. I've considered, like that this doesn't happen like that. No one's got time for that.
No, that's why this is fiction. So this is the, being able to explore that sort of thing in a way that entertains, that takes people on a journey. But, just like I did with the Tom Clancy novels, or just like I did with those other novels from David Morrell and Nelson DeMille growing up, I learned a ton from reading those novels, even though they were fiction. And it also helped instill in me a love of reading, not just fiction, but nonfiction, historical fiction, all of that. And I think that makes me is a big part of who I am today. So yes, I do get to explore that through these fictional characters and fictional scenarios. Although there's enough realism in there that keeps it authentic. So that's why I wanted to take away absolutely everything. Because I remember growing up, the voiceover in those movies I used to love, they always say, he had nothing left to lose. Yes. And I was always like, well, he could die. He could always die. So I wanted to really go back to that old the Bushido, how samurai would go into battle in ancient Japan thinking they were already dead, because that made them more effective and efficient warriors. So I thought, how do you do that today? How do you do that to a modern warrior? How do you take away everything and then put him into combat thinking he is already dead? And that's the conspiracy I came up with, that I really got from the church hearings that took place in the 70s that exposed a lot of overreach, let's say, by certain government agencies, CIA in particular. What if enough time has passed since the church hearings where somebody didn't get the memo and they've gone back and are now testing out a drug on our nation's most elite warriors that has some side effects? And that's really what kicks off the premise and the conspiracy in the first novel, The Terminalist. So yes, answer to the question is, you get to explore all of that through the medium of a fictional thriller, which is a blast for me.
It strikes me as funny, like all three of us have seen a lot of time in combat zones. So when you get briefed by a JAG on how to be risk adverse and avoid dangerous things, but you realize all we do are dangerous things. You're asking us to put this totally unrealistic lens on what's happening. And by the way, our peers across the street from us are not doing the same thing, and we've got to adapt to that environment. It just it struck me as funny. Scott, I'm sure, has something to say about that. But like that, Scott talks about the friction of combat and those things. Like, I think of friction in terms of logistics. Like, how many times in Iraq did I sit in a chair and have it just completely shatter underneath me? Or I go up to a door and the door no longer opens, and I'm like, fuck. Now I've got to spend 45 minutes trying to unfuck this door so I can go into my office, or whatever it is, right? Like, all of these things. Does any of that stuff leak into your books at all?
Oh, yeah. Not on that level, not on the, let's say, the administrative tactical level, but more on the strategic level decisions that are made by people sitting in comfortable chairs back in Washington and Northern Virginia. So that definitely creeps in, more than creeps in, with senior level military leaders and politicians in particular. So you get to, I get to take some of those emotions. And I guess that comes from, if we had made the same type of decisions tactically that our senior level leaders made strategically, we would have been court-martialed, thrown out of the military. But senior level military leaders, senior level politicians make these atrocious strategic level decisions and just continue on, stay in office and get promoted.
You mean downloading secret material off the SIPRNet on a hard drive and then just handing it off to a petty officer? Hold this for me.
It's great for, I guess it's very therapeutic, I should say, that I get to explore those things through the medium of a
man, that's liberating.
Fiction.
That's got to be liberating. Do you use this genre, this medium to really purge all that stuff that people want to say, and you don't have any, I guess, repercussions? Because when you write nonfiction, everyone often asks, did you send this to the Department of Defense to get clearance? I'm like, no, I didn't, because I wasn't given any way to treat secrets or anything confidential. But a lot of guys have to go through that process. You don't, because it's fiction. And I think that opens yourself up a little bit. Talk to me about the critics when they read your stuff on accuracy and using that as kind of especially the politics, man, because you're all over Twitter too. And you don't dabble too much in the politics, but how do you do with the critics?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's because this is a whole new thing for me. So I'm really just 3 years into this. And before I started down this path, I didn't have a Facebook account. Back in the early days, I didn't have a MySpace account, didn't have Instagram, didn't have Twitter, didn't want any of those sorts of things, and just saw them as nothing good could have come from those had I had any of those accounts while in the military. Now it's a little different. Now it's weird. Now you're the outlier coming in if you don't have that electronic history, but that's another discussion altogether. So delving into this has been an education. And just like on the battlefield, I look at these things as opportunities that weren't there 20 years ago, 30 years ago for authors. Just like this podcast wasn't around 30 years ago, 20 years ago for an author to reach an audience or help build a readership. But part of that is now you are much more accessible. And especially if you're just like you're building any business and you're out there and you make a comment here or you post something there, you are now open to every single person that has a cell phone or a computer, and they can all let you know exactly how they feel about whatever you posted or whatever you wrote in your novel. And there's no filter. There's no editorial board.
No,
like
there's
there
not.
was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. So everybody gets their say. So I don't spend too much time dwelling on it. And the way I look at negative reviews or the people that are super critical, a tad bit crazy, is that, hey, you know what they're doing? They're just selling a book to a person that's going to like it for the exact reason that this person doesn't. So when I see that person writing something about too violent, too political, too right wing, or whatever it may be, I'm like, hey, you know what? This is just selling it to the person that's looking for that exact thing. So
sure,
thank you, crazy person on Amazon Review or Goodreads or wherever you are. So I look at it like that. I try to put that little positive type spin on it, so that I don't go crazy and I don't respond to.
As a guy that learned more about social media at age 46 when I started into this realm, the one rule I set for myself is don't ever respond to the crazy, because once you start drinking the poison, it's going to kill you, and you just cannot do that. I think that you're probably inundated with it too. You got a big readership. The books are hugely popular, and you do have to deal with that. But I mean, you manage your own social media?
Yeah. I'm about that stage where I'm going to maybe need some help here soon or something, but I try to respond to everyone, thank everyone, because I'm sincerely appreciative that the people are reading the novels, telling their friends about it, and really it's modern day word of mouth. So the way I look at social media is that, hey, that's my storefront. Just like if I owned a general store in small town America and someone came in and I'm behind the counter and they asked me, hey, where can I get some cereal?
Absolutely.
They came in and said, hey, I'm looking for directions to the interstate, whatever it is. And I'm going to treat them the same way, people on social media, the same way I would if I was behind that counter in my general store. So that's the way I look at it. And same thing, if someone crazy comes in, you're going to want to escort them out as soon as possible, which is the block feature on social media, which I am a huge fan of. So really anything negative, anything crazy, block, you're done. So that's kind of the way I look at it and deal with it. And I try not to, I don't go down any rabbit holes because I don't have time. When someone wants to engage on something political or some sort of an issue, like there's just not time in the day for me to do that, and that's not what I do. So I just maybe give it a little heart and move on. Or if it's crazy, then you're blocked. But really, it's really just a way for me to thank people and also offer something of value. So that's why when I'm not just promoting my stuff on social media. I don't use it just as an advertising platform. I use it as a way to engage and offer hopefully something of value to people that go to that page and learn a little bit about history, terrorist events, learn a little bit more about me, get a peek behind the curtain, and maybe inspire people with a little bit of my journey and show that, hey, it's possible, and don't pay attention to the odds, make the life you want and get out there and get after it. So that's kind of how I look at social media.
Speaking of social media and podcasts that didn't exist 30 years ago, you are on a podcast. You can talk to 80 different countries right now where we have active listeners. Tell them why they want to go out and buy your book. Here's your chance to elevator pitch, I don't know, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people.
Nice. I love it. So, I mean, that's a tough one because I just do the job and I'm not really, when I market or when I talk about it, I'm not really, selling, I guess I'm selling a book, but it's kind of secondary. It's kind of in addition to whatever value hopefully I'm offering. But these are novels where they feel real. They're complete fiction, and you go on a journey just like you would in any movie or any book in this genre. Those emotions and those feelings that the protagonist feels are real. I didn't interview someone who was in special operations and then think about how they would feel about doing something. No, that's how I felt doing those things, and that's how that comes across in the novel, and that's why I think that's why they're doing so well. So if you want that kind of a journey and want to get a little bit of a peek into the mind of a special operations warrior through the medium of political thriller, then pick these up. And I'd suggest starting with the first one because they continue and they're all part of the journey for a character. The second one, True Believer, it's really a novel of redemption. And it's about someone who goes on a transformative journey, just like we all do when we leave the military. So I tapped into those feelings. What does it feel like to leave that and move on to something else? Because that's what the character has to do in the second novel. He has to learn how to live again, find his next purpose, find his next mission. And then this third one is The Savage Son. And that's where I explore the dark side of man through the hunter-hunted dynamic. And I was inspired by The Most Dangerous Game that I read back in sixth grade. So back then, even in sixth grade, I knew that one day I'd write a modern thriller that paid tribute to that classic tale. So Savage Son is that book.
Is The Most Dangerous Game, is that the Ice-T version? Or is it...
Nice. I like that you knew that. No, it goes back to the original Richard Connell 1924 short story.
All right.
And so anybody that knows that story should get a kick out of Savage Son.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here, and if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
So anybody that knows that story should get a kick out of Savage Son.
When you start a new career like this, there's the dream of what it is, and obviously the reality is going to be different. But what are some of the things where you're like, I love writing, but I really don't have a lot of time for X, or I really didn't realize this was going to be so hard. Like, for example, if you get to, I think it's 2,500 reviews in your book, it'll make money for the rest of your life. It'll constantly sell. It'll never stop. But whoever thought about that? Like, I'm trying to write a good book. What are some of those things that you've picked up? You're like, this is part of the business, and it's not always pretty, but I sure wish I could replace this with something else.
Wow, I did not know that about the 2,500. So thank you for passing that along. And,
I told Pete that.
Interesting.
No, I didn't. Pete's way smarter than me. Everyone knows it.
No idea. But so for me, I didn't know that there was a business side to this. And all I thought about as I got ready to get out of the military and started doing this, and then even when I gave it to New York, and I didn't even know I needed an agent. I'm glad I didn't, because I might not have these books out today had I known that. But I didn't know there was a business side to this. I thought you just wrote and you can live at a cabin in the mountains and send it to New York. And I thought, okay, there's some edits that go back and forth, but that's it. I did not know that everything you have to do as an author are the same things you would have to do if you were starting any business. So all of the marketing and the branding and the co-branding and the advertising, the social media, the engagement, budgets, everything you have to do as an author. But that's really, you're building, it's a startup, and it's just like you would start a startup for anything in your garage. So I did not know that was the case. I mean, a few months out, I was like, I guess I need a website. So I guess I should have one of those. And I guess I'm going to have to do some social media. So if you go to the bottom of my Instagram, you'll see there's like no pictures of me. And then you can kind of trace my progression. And then I discover filters. And then I put a picture of me from my back where you can see my backpack and the side, a little bit of the side of my head. And then it kind of goes and you can see the progression if you go to the bottom and work your way up. But it was I guess, a shock that it wasn't just writing and then sending a manuscript to New York, that it was all these other things. But for me, as soon as I realized that, then I looked at them and say, these are all opportunities, and these are all opportunities that other authors that started up in the 70s and 80s did not have. And I have them today. So how do I take advantage of this momentum? How do I take advantage of these emerging opportunities, just like I would on the battlefield? And how do I offer people something of value? And that's really what it was all about. So I'm constantly learning and constantly adapting, just like I would on the battlefield. And that's how I look at it. Although the repercussions from making a bad decision are a lot less dire, in that my guys aren't going to be coming home in boxes. And that's so for me, that's I can solve those problems on the written page, and I can figure out those problems. Not necessarily, I don't have to do them in real time on the battlefield with bullets flying. As far as the business side of this, I can take a breath. I can think about things and then make the best decision as I move forward.
That's a great message that's constantly reinforced on every episode that we've had any type of veteran artist on. Is you could write a bestseller in your basement or in your cabin in the woods, but if you're not willing to turn the hat around and become a businessman, marketing, promotion, because Simon & Schuster is only going to do so much. Big publishing houses only going to do so much. If you're not willing to give of yourself, you're going to be one of those guys that says, well, why isn't my story doing well? Why am I not selling these books? Because it's not just putting fingers on a keyboard and then sending it to your editor. There's so much more. And you just nailed that. And it's a great message for any veteran, especially any writer that wants to share a story, because veterans don't own great stories. We're just a part of it. So to hear that time and again is really powerful. It's inspiring for the best word I could find. And you're doing that. Let's talk about your involvement now with the Terminalist and Chris Pratt. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because that just blew up, man. That's some good stuff. Can we talk about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't talk about it until now, but now that they've announced it, I can talk about it. But yeah, Chris optioned it before it even came out. So before it hit shelves in March of 2018 is when it came out, when the publication date. Before then, he optioned it. And the crazy part of this is, as I was writing, I thought of not who my character would be, but who could play my character, who'd be the best person to play James Reese. And it's so crazy because as I'm writing this, Chris is doing Parks and Rec. He had a very small part in Zero Dark 30, which is probably what, I guess, subliminally in my head made me think of him as the one person I thought about to play James Reese as I was writing, which is so crazy. And to have that happen. And then I also thought of the one director I thought of directing this was Anton Fuqua.
Huh.
So I thought of both those people, and now they're the two people that are involved in making this happen. So it's just, a crazy story how all that came about, but I feel so fortunate, and it can still derail. So I'm keeping my expectations very low. So I can derail.
But Chris Pratt can grow a good beard, which is essential for playing your character, because you can go from beard to no beard. I don't know if James Reese does, but I don't know if James Reese grows beard, no beard, but you do. I like that.
Yeah,
probably
the most important part of it. But Chris is an amazing guy. He's such a great guy. We spent a little time together here over the last year. I could not think. There's a lot of trust because we had I had 3 different options on the table, and I chose Chris. There was no question I was going to choose Chris because that's how it's a lot of trust involved. And for me, thinking about him playing this character as I was writing it, and then having it come to fruition, and him wanting it before it even came out, before anybody even knew that I existed or this book existed. It was just, hey, the stars are aligning here, and this makes sense. And even if it doesn't happen, this is the right decision.
Was your decision based in any part by the fact that Chris has been very vocal in Hollywood about support for the military, and which lends itself to being more conservative in a lot of regards?
I mean, it would have had I needed to factor that in, but I didn't need to factor that in at all. It was more the, hey, I thought of this person playing this role. now he wants it. There's no way that I should go with anyone else. Don't get greedy. So I went with Chris. Of course, I was always going to. Yeah, but no, it does certainly help that he does have a mindset similar to mine in a lot of respects, and I think that he's at that stage in his career where, just like, remember, like Tom Hanks in the '80s, we all grew up with him, Joe versus the volcano, or Bosom Buddies, or whatever else, and then all of a sudden,
man with one red shoe.
Yeah, exactly, and then all of a sudden he does Philadelphia. And total 180 for him as an actor. And now, then from then on, he could choose any role he wanted. Just shows his versatility. Took a risk, and it worked out. And that really gave him the options and opportunities to do what he's done since. And I thought, you know what, Chris is amazing. He's an amazing guy. He's obviously he's at that stage where he needs to do something like that as well. Do something that's a little darker, that shows his range as an actor. So more physical. And this is that role. And he recognized that as well. He chose. I feel very honored that he's chosen this story to be that role for him. So fingers crossed. And I've been working on the script for the last month or so as an advisor to the screenwriter, who's an amazing guy, and I could not be more happy with what they've done with it. It's so cool, and it's so educational for me to see this process and see how they do it and how it evolves. And so for me, I'm just so thankful to be here.
I want to make sure I make this comment so we don't get too far past it. I'm wondering when someone is going to discover that Tom Hanks did a movie as a cross-dressing, like Bosom Buddies couldn't be made today. Like, it would be too offensive for everybody. And it's like they have no idea he did it, And so when they discover this, the world's going to end. That's just a comment for the audience to enjoy. But the question I want to ask you about this is so look, you're just some dumb seal on the teams. How the hell does Chris Pratt find your book?
Yeah. So that's a great story. Let's see. How do I go about talking about this? Because I want to make sure that I talk to all the people involved and make sure I get their go ahead. But I got a call out of the blue in the fall of 2017. So before the books come out, from an old buddy from the teams, and I hadn't talked to him in 5 years or so, and great guy. And he calls me and says, and so this is when the galley came out. And I didn't even know what a galley was until right about this time. And so a galley copy is a pre release of a novel. It's in like a paperback type form. It's still a rough draft for all practical purposes that come out and goes to reviewers and influencers ahead of publication dates, so they can give blurbs. Other authors can give blurbs. Reviewers can get their reviews ready to go, that sort of thing. So I had those. But my friend calls and says, "Hey, do you remember me?" I'm like, "Oh, of course. How's it going?" And he says, "Well, I always wanted to thank you for what you did for me in the SEAL teams." And I was like, "Oh man, what did I get him out of jail? Did I, going through the memory banks of all the experiences that I had over 20 years in the teams with everybody?" It was a very simple thing. And we sat down in my office as he was getting ready to get out, and we talked about transition, and we introduced him to a couple people in the private sector, and just like I would do for any good guy leaving the SEAL teams, or somebody that's staying in the SEAL teams that just needs a little advice on their path. But anyway, it's that made an impact with him, and he wanted to call and say thank you, and I was like, "Absolutely, man, it's my pleasure." And he said, "I heard you have a book coming out." And I said, "Yeah, I got a book coming out. It's coming out in a few months. So these galley copy things, if you want to take a look at it, I'd love to send you one." And he said, "Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to check it out, but I'd also like to give one to a friend of mine." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, no problem. Who's that?" And he says, "Chris Pratt." I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting," because that's the one person I thought of as I was writing this novel, is playing this character. So anyway, that's how that came about, and sent it off, and Chris read it and loved it, and next thing you know, he's optioned it. So it's a very, very cool. Both those guys are just outstanding human beings in general. And if Chris wasn't an actor, we'd be doing things together regardless, because he's such a great guy. And feel very fortunate that things are on this path. But once again, want to keep my expectations low. Things can go off the rails in Hollywood at any time, so I don't want to be disappointed if it doesn't happen. So I got to manage those expectations as well. Just feel fortunate that it's as far as it is.
And are you adapting the screenplay yourself, or is someone else adapting the book into a screenplay for you?
No, David Gjorgjiev, who's an awesome guy. He's the showrunner, screenwriter. I'm just assisting mostly on the technical side of things. and really just learning. I want them to have the professionals. Kind of like people ask me, hey, did you read your audiobook? No, I want the best guy out there reading my audiobook. And that's Ray Porter, who's amazing. And he has a huge following. When people follow him from, like they do with all these top narrators, follow them from project to project rather than author to author. People follow audiobooks, they'll follow a narrator to different projects. I didn't really know that. But I want the best narrator out there doing the audiobook. I want the best screenwriter out there adapting it for film. So I'm just assisting and learning, which is really cool. But it's fantastic. I couldn't be more excited about the team they put together for this.
No, that's great, man. Does anyone ever ask you the question, why didn't you read your own book?
Yeah, I get that a lot. And that's that same answer, with the best guy out there reading it. And I didn't really think about how people follow narrators to different projects at all. I realized that way after I chose Ray Porter. And I just chose Ray Porter because Simon & Schuster called me one afternoon and said, hey, who do you want to read your audiobook? And I was like, I don't know, because I'm a reader. I need that physical book there. So I'm not really an audiobook person. And they said, well, just let us know by the end of the day. And it was like 2 PM. It's like give me like an hour New York time. So I started listening to the samples in all these different books. I'm just like sample. And then I listened to Ray, and I was like, ooh, that's good. And I listened to a bunch of his other ones, the samples from other things that he's done. And I said, this is the guy. And luckily, he had this huge following. I had no idea. And then it got nominated for Best Audiobook of the Year last year, which was great. So we got to go to New York and put on the tuxes and hang out in person together. And he's just a fantastic guy as well. And it was so cool to see it up there next to Stephen King and next to Ruth Ware. Ruth Ware won. But it was just so cool to see it up there with all those people that had been writing for so long and are just such fantastic authors. So, very cool. But I think if I did some sort of a nonfiction type deal, and it wouldn't be, an autobiography of, what I did in the teams or anything. There's some other ideas I have in that realm. But if I did something there, then I would probably read that one myself.
Yeah, that's something they don't tell you. I wish I would have gotten that information 2 years ago as well, or 3 years ago when we were developing it. But I think you're one of the rare exceptions too. I was in New York doing a Veterans Day event, and I reached out to Dave Morantz, who read Echo Intermati, and one striking fact came up at dinner. He said, "You're the first author I've ever met," because we're so dispersed. But I thought that was rare. But to get to meet the guy that reads you, that's pretty cool.
Oh, so cool. Yeah. And if we didn't meet up in New York, I would have flown out to LA and would have had beers out there. But I think it's important to have that personal connection, especially with somebody that's a great guy. Like I just lucked out that Ray happens to be a great guy. If he wasn't, it'd be a different story. I don't know what I'd do. I guess to be selling books, I'd stick with it. But he just happens to be an amazing person, and we get along great. And he's just, it's super fun to work with people that are cool and that you're friends with. I feel very fortunate in that respect across the board. Everybody at Simon & Schuster is amazing. My publicist is amazing. My editor-publisher, Emily Bessler, she published Vince Flynn, continues to publish him with the Kyle Mills novels, publishes Brad Thor. This entire team, I just could not be more fortunate to have so many great people working on this with me.
Hey, tell us what's next. I mean, obviously you're writing more books, but what's out there on the horizon? You have the Chris Pratt project, and that's cool. But like you said, tempered expectations. But what's out there that's in your control that we can expect from you?
Yep. So it's book 4 is where now I finished the final edits to book 3 to Savage Son just a couple nights ago. Because you go back and forth a few times, and then people start finding when these galleys come out, people start noticing little mistakes here and there, mostly grammar that haven't been caught up to that point. It's amazing how the human brain works. I mean, you read a sentence thousands of times and you know what should be there. So your brain puts it there, but it's not really there. And someone else catches it that's reading it for the first time, an "and" that should be an "a" or should be an "and." But your mind has just thrown the "d" in there or taken off the "n" because that's how the sentence should read. It's incredible. It's always fascinating to me. So finished that just a couple nights ago. And that means that after this podcast, I go 100% full force into book 4. I'm super excited about it. It's all outlined. I've started it, and now it's just continuing to look for those emerging opportunities and solve those problems on the page, which is what I love, because in the outline section, and this holds true from the first novel through the third and into the fourth, if I ran into a problem in that outline, I didn't get discouraged. I didn't stop and wait until I figured out that problem until I moved on. I just went over it. I put a little question mark, put a little X, and continued to move forward because I knew that I had time. I had time to go back on the battlefield. I didn't, here I do. So I'm confident that in the year that it takes to do these, I will figure out that problem as I work through this novel. And then I go back to it later. And that really helps keep things moving forward. So that's what will be happening here in the next weeks and months, is that all those things that I skipped over in book 4 because I didn't have the answer right there, but I didn't want it to hold me up. Well, those will start getting solved as I immerse myself deeper and deeper into the plot, into the characters, into the theme as I continue to push forward. So that's really the focus of the next few months. And then paperback book of True Believer comes out February 25th. So I have a bunch of things that are coming out as far as content wise around that. And then April 14th is Savage Sun. So there'll be a build up to that as well with different content and a book tour, all that sort of thing, a book festival in Florida. So there's all these little one-offs here and there that keep me busy, that are part of the business side of this, that are not just the writing side of this. So really figuring out that balance, and sometimes it swings all the way to the business side, and then sometimes it swings all the way back to the writing side, and sometimes it's in the middle going back and forth. So it's we got to get it all done. It's all part of that's all part of being a professional writer.
Yeah.
Professional writer.
And you've got it all that's on your website, in addition to you've got gear and merchandise, and our friend Eli Crane, Bottle Breacher, there's some cool stuff there. And you also support multiple charities through offering those pieces of merchandise up and the books and everything. So just tell everybody where to go, where to find Jack Carr.
Yeah. So officialjackcarr.com is the website. And for people that want a little more deep dive into some of the weapons or what I use in the books, what I used in the military, there's that information's out there on the blog, on the website. So they can check all that out. And then there's a link to jackcarrusa.com, which is the merchandise. And really, I didn't want to just get a few followers or people whatever, and throw a hat or a t-shirt up and try to make some money off it. That didn't really sit right with me. So, but I still wanted, but people kept asking me about it. And I wanted to do something. And so what I did was figure out a few different things that were personal to me, like Bottle Breacher. I have that connection to Eli. There's a really cool bookmark made out of copper that are all handmade, that have a 5.56 shell that hangs off the end of it to mark your place in a novel. That's a veteran-owned business. So there's a few things up there on the website, Jack Carr USA, but all the profits go to veteran-focused foundations, and those are highlighted on the side as well. And they're veteran foundations that I have a personal connection to. So I didn't just pick one out of a hat that sounded cool or had a cool website or something like that. I have a personal connection to each and every one of those veteran-focused foundations, and those are explained and highlighted on that webpage. So that's out there. And then on the social media front, it's Jack Carr at Jack Carr USA on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But 3 was too many. 3 was one. Oh my goodness. So Facebook just reposts from Instagram. So I hope people on Facebook don't get mad because it's not, I'm not responding to anything. It just happens to repost there. So there is a Facebook page, but I try to get back to each and every person on Instagram and Twitter. And you can sign up for my newsletter as well. And every month I have a reading list that comes out. 6 books from my reading list will be highlighted each month. I've been doing that since October. And the serious readers like that because I give a little paragraph or two on why each book was impactful to me at a certain stage in my life, either as a writer or as a military professional, and why. So that's out there as well. So I'm out there active in those spaces, and really do appreciate everybody that reaches out, because they're the reason that I can do this, and that I've been able to transition to this next stage of my life. And I really appreciate all the word of mouth that has made this a success, because I didn't come from a background in politics or sports or have a following from something. Mm-hmm. It was from nothing, and it was the word of mouth from readers that made this book, or these books now, such a success. So be forever grateful for that.
I love it. Now you got to read Scott's book and give the big recommendation.
I have it right here. Absolutely. Yeah. We got to meet at SHOT Show and hang out for a bit. So I'm looking forward
with
to
Ross Kaminsky.
Yep. Yep. What a great guy. He's so fun to talk to. Love
What's
talking
up,
to
Ross?
Yep. I'll see him in part of the tour in April. We're going to do a little thing at a shooting range out there as part of the tour in Colorado. So looking forward to seeing him out there.
Thanks for coming on the show, man. I appreciate it. You're always welcome to come back on. And I know people will dig your books, because our audience, one of the things, you don't get to pick what happens, but our audience likes to buy books and read them. And I get feedback all the time on positive things. Just the other day, one of the people from the audience was reading Scott's book all the way to the other side of the world, the other hemisphere, another day of the week, where they live. It's so far away, but there she is reading Scott's book. So these things move, and I appreciate it. And everybody who buys the book, do go on to Amazon, rate and review it. You have to do that, because that's money for an author.
I didn't really realize that at all. And like I said, I didn't do any research into this space other than just dive in, but they do help. And what I also encourage people to do, since we're talking about it, is to go to their favorite books and read the bad reviews on their favorite books, because you'll see like how crazy it can be, and how someone will give like a 1 star for a book coming with a torn cover from Amazon. Of course, it has nothing to do with what's in the book.
Yeah.
But it drags down that.
But you also here, if you don't know this, also click on the reviewer's profile and see what else they reviewed. If they reviewed 50 books, or they reviewed one book, gave it a 1-star review, and also they have like this egg beater and an exercise machine and diapers.
It's hilarious.
It's kind of skewed math, but I can't do algorithms or math in public, dude.
It is, but the point being is that to counter those crazy ones on your favorite book, or your favorite author or whatever else, then it's important to leave one and leave a good one. It is. To counter some of that craziness, because you're right. The person that reviews 13 egg beaters, and then all of a sudden they review the book and give it a 1-star review because it came with a torn cover, or because it's too right wing or whatever it may be.
Sure.
Then it definitely helps.
Well, you can count on some fire support from me and Pete. And hey, I just want to say thanks, man, and keep up the fire, brother. We're proud of you, and love what you're doing out there. Semper Fi.
Thanks so much for the support. It's sincerely appreciated, and hopefully we'll meet up again in person soon.